Good evening, everyone. The meeting will come to order. Today is February 12th, and the meeting will start at 6:31. Let the meeting reflect that we do have a quorum present, although we are missing Louis Jones. I'm not Louis Jones, just in case you were wondering. He's our chair. He's out of town, so I will be covering for him today. Thank you for having me, everybody. Also wanted to give you a quick technology note. Typically, we have the agenda on that screen for you all, but we just are having some technical difficulties with it today, so I apologize that's not up for you. Our mission at City Schools of Decatur is to challenge every student to succeed by providing a rigorous, engaging, and authentic learning experience delivered by highly qualified, caring adults in a safe and inviting school. We will now observe a moment of silence, please. And will the members of the board please rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, well, to show, reflect the minutes from last month's, any revisions, I'm sorry. So I just want to see if there's any revisions or an approval on the agenda. Okay, hearing none, the minutes are, the agenda is approved. And minutes from last month's, any revisions or comments on that? No. All righty, so we are going to move on to our spotlight. Dr. Duty.
All right, today we are going to hear from Winona Park Elementary, so come on up.
My school.
I'm Ruth Scott. I'm the principal of Winona Park. And at Winona Park, we've been learning about mindfulness under the leadership of our PE coach, Carrie Beecham, and our third grade teacher, Cara Morrison. We've learned the value and power of mindfulness, breathing, and being still. And every year, Ms. Morrison selects students to step up and be mindful leaders within our school. And they get to go into other classrooms and teach younger students and lead mindful practices and practice breathing with them. So tonight we have 4 mindful leaders, Anna, Charlie, Lucy, and Trini, who will lead us in a mindful moment.
Good evening. We are some of the mindful leaders from Ms. Morrison's class. We teach mindfulness to different classes around the school. One reason we like to teach mindfulness is because we know a lot of people today are stressed out. When you are stressed out for a long time, your amygdala can get overreactive and start acting like everything's an emergency. Scientists have looked at brain scans from people who do mindfulness for 45 minutes a day. They see that after 9 weeks of doing mindfulness, people's amygdala actually shrinks back to the size it should be and isn't so inflamed anymore. That can make a huge difference in how you feel. Tonight we decided to lead a gratitude mindfulness with you all because gratitude also makes a huge difference in how you feel. It's nice to know to have something that can help you feel better, especially if you might be going through a hard time. As I ring the chime, just allow your eyes to close. Notice your body. Notice your touch points, where your body is making contact with a chair or another part of your body. Notice how sounds come and go. Place one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart. Notice your breath coming and going like a wave.
Now, you can open your eyes for a moment to see how we will demonstrate our fingers to breathe. We will press our pinky to our thumb. So, press your thumb to your pinky. You can allow your eyes to close again. Picture your favorite color. Picture all of the things that are this color. Feel gratitude that this color is in the world. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe long and slow. Next, press your thumb to your ring finger. Picture your favorite animal. It could be a pet, or it could just be an animal from nature that you love. Breathe in. Breathe out. Pointer to thumb. Really press. Oh, next finger. Think of an inspiring person. Someone who has made the world better. It could be someone you know or someone from history. Have gratitude that this person has done such good work in the world. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe all the way to your belly. Thumb to pointer. Really press. Feel that pressure. Picture a place you love. A place where you feel safe and peaceful. Feel gratitude for this place. Breathe in. Breathe out. Thumbs up. Think of a hobby, something you love to do. Feel gratitude that your body lets you do this. Breathe in. Breathe out.
We are going to do one more round. Thumb to pinky. Think of someone in your family that makes you feel loved. Feel gratitude for this person. Breathe in. Breathe out. Long, deep breaths. Next finger. Feel that pressure. Think of a book you love. It might be a book that makes you go, wow, yes, that's exactly what life is about. Have gratitude that the author took the time to write this book. Breathe in. Breathe out. Next finger. Picture something from nature that you love. Really picture every detail. Feel how thankful you are that this exists. Breathe in. Breathe out. Thumb to pointer. Think of a friend who makes you feel cared for and listened to. Feel gratitude for this friend. Breathe in. Breathe out. To end, we'll read a precept and ring our ending chime. Our precept for tonight is, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. I'll read this one more time so it can sink in. Feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. From William Arthur Ward. We hope you enjoyed this mindfulness. You can use your fingers to do gratitude practice at home. We found that it is very helpful to practice gratitude on days when you are feeling the least grateful. We hope this makes a difference in your life like it has in ours.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. That was really good. You almost heard me snoring up here. That was awesome. All right, so we are going to move on to public comment.
Yes.
How many do we have today?
We have 4 speakers.
All right, 4 speakers, 3 minutes apiece. And we'll have Tom Keating first. Yeah, he was letting them pass by.
Should have used that meditation last month. Thank you very much for a chance to be here. Thank you for several things, the numbers on the front door. Before you came in, I thought we might have one of those historic Decatur things when we have 3 people and the vote was 2-1 and we weren't quite sure if we had the quorum or if we had the right votes, but you're here. Thank you for the library copy. I noticed the packet, which was here at 6 o'clock, was gone by 6:10. That illustrates once again that we don't have access to the documents we need. Thank you for the bio that appeared, and let me mention at this point a larger issue. We know the expression, it takes a village. What we don't know is that the village has a bell tower, and the bell tower rings. It rings to celebrate, and it brings to bring attention. It brings attention in case there's a sudden flooding, loose animals, bandits, lots of things happen. So this evening I signed in, name, street, phone, email. But board members, though you made an improvement, you have individual emails. Took some discussion, no telephone numbers, many of the things which we used to have. So I'm wondering why we're closing up. I don't know why we're so closing up. And then, guess what? As a result of an action, you put in 3.3H, which appears. And 3.3H, I don't think's had 30 days to be responded to. I have to go to a birthday party this evening for a 70-year-old, but I'm amazed that you have put in not policy based on direction or answering the 3 major questions, but basically a prison's rule book, a way of controlling by bringing together executive leaders and lawyers, and a way that is totally out of line with Decatur. It's just not Decatur, as they say. So I would at least offer for you that the bell tolls for you. Don't pass that policy tonight. Get comments. Think it through. Thank you for the things you've done, and the meditation worked. That's much better tonight.
Okay, next, public comment from Fonta Cowens.
I heard something earlier this week that John Lewis said, if you see something that's not right, not fair, not just, not moral, you have a moral obligation to speak up, speak out, and find a way to become involved. And I feel like I've tried to do that repeatedly. I've been to this board. I've spoken out many times about different issues. I've sent emails to the board. And I feel like a lot of what we've said, what I've said, what a lot of people have said here, have fallen on deaf ears, and that's unfortunate. One of the things that I spoke about last year, I sent an email to the superintendent last May 16th, was in regards to the principal position at my son's school at Winona Park. At that time, there was a meeting at the school where 2 individuals from the front office came. They gave everybody a piece of paper that described the qualifications needed. I asked the 2 individuals there if they had already had qualified individuals that applied. They said that they did. In fact, they said that there were 2 levels. There was a qualified level, and then there was a level beyond that, people who met the qualification and had beyond that skill set. I asked them if they had any applicants that met that beyond skill set. The gentleman said, I wouldn't say that half our applicants would, but we had an awful lot of them that did. So I was very shocked when a couple weeks later an email came out to all of the parents saying that that position was being suspended. I asked the superintendent through an email at that time why it was being suspended, and I was hoping that it was not being suspended purposely to wait for somebody else that had been pre-selected, essentially. I was assured that that was not the case. I explained to the superintendent that at that meeting there were a gathering of parents who were clearly advocating for one particular candidate. However, the parents that were there made it clear that the candidate that they wanted was not yet qualified for the position. So I asked the superintendent, I said, are we holding off hiring this position until this person is qualified? And I was told no. But in fact, last week we got a notice that a principal had been named and that it was that applicant. And I don't know, this could turn out to be a good choice, but it seems there's a little disconnect in the email that I sent last year and the action that was just taken. It does appear that the position was kept on hold for a particular person. So in closing, I sincerely hope that the district has not left themselves open to a lawsuit. As the two gentlemen that came from the front office said, one of the parents said, well, why can't we hire this person? And the gentleman from the front office said, because if we hire someone who's not qualified, or if we do this, we open the school up to the lawsuit. So I hope the school district has not done that. I hope the school district has chosen someone that they think will be representative of the neighborhood and not just the chosen person. So, and with that, I'm out of town.
Okay, next speaker, Dr. Tiffany Tesselmichael. She's here. Okay, not sure if she's here, so we'll move on to Claire Scheck-Snyder.
Good evening. My name's Claire Scheck-Snyder, and I live at 116 Drexel Avenue, and I'm the mother of a freshman at Decatur High. And I just wanted to take note of the fact that on Thursday it's the 1-year anniversary of the shooting at Parkland, in Parkland, Florida, where 17 students died. And we've had 113 kids killed in our schools in the U.S. This year from 23 major incidents, and there have been hundreds of incidents of guns in our schools and things like that. We here in Decatur have had lockdowns, as you know very well, and we just had a lockdown on Monday, right, for a moment where there was a fight across the school. Across the street from the school, and it's just, it's just so concerning to me that our kids are kind of unfazed by it or don't know what to think of it. And I would really like for us to, as a school district, consider what we do, and that this community knows what we're doing when there is a red alert, that students know that it's serious business, and that they at least know, because I know that when we had the lockdown previously, my kids' first thought was, well, this is outside of our school, it's not in the high school, so we don't need to be as concerned. And that's, I mentioned to him that that's awful, that did he think that there were other kids that were being affected? And he was like, oh my God, I'm so desensitized. So a red alert. And then the other thing that I would really like for us to know about is the Say Something warning system of allowing people to make anonymous tips. Schools that have been surveyed that have had shootings showed that none of the hardening tactics of hardening your schools really works, but the anonymous tips being able to be made by students and parents and community members can really save lives. And we know that the governor has approved $8.4 million for school security, and a lot of that's going to go to mental health professionals, but I would really like for our school to institute that anonymous tip program. I think it'll really, really help make a difference, and that's the best that we can do at this point. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, so now we will move on to superintendent, oh, yes. Oh, I apologize. Attorney Davis, come forward. I didn't see your name.
Yeah, it's not on here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We just received word today of a disturbing incident, set of incidents at Renfro Middle, and I just would like to read it to kind of, based on time. We wrote and sent this to Principal Wiseman today. We're writing to express our concerns about two recent situations which appear to indicate issues regarding cultural humility and discipline disproportionality of Renfro Middle School. The first issue involves the 7th grade Black History Month activity involving African drumming and dance performances in the Renfro cafeteria, which took place on today. It is our understanding that one of the 7th grade teachers, communicated that students who did not have a permission slip could not attend this culturally enriching Black History Month program. Any teacher who attempted to restrict students from attending this important cultural exchange due to a permission slip for an in-school activity being held in the cafeteria, again, is way off base as it relates to all of the work that we've been doing. So it's our position that it makes absolutely no sense that a team of teachers would say, if you don't bring this permission slip, you can't go to the cafeteria, not outside of the school. This blatant disregard for the importance of Black history for all students, and again, it's our position that all students needed to have this level of exposure, indicates a lack of cultural competence. And so we're hopeful that whatever teacher, administrator was involved in that decision is addressed, and that's reflected in their evaluation, as we've discussed this being an ongoing issue. Secondly, it has come to our attention that certain students were informed that they would not be able to leave Renfro to participate in the Culture of Caring community service days, which took place today and tomorrow. These students, who appear to be predominantly of African descent, were told that they could not leave the building because they might misbehave. Some of these same students indicated that they had received no write-ups or suspensions and were confused as to why they were singled out to be excluded from participating. If these allegations are in fact true, this arbitrary discriminatory action is a violation of these students' educational and civil rights. And finally, we've worked very hard to address some of the systemic issues which continue to impact students of color in general, but students of African descent in particular. While equity and diversity have been stressed at the district level, these allegations lead us to question the commitment to the cultural change we so desperately need at the school level. And we're requesting that there be an investigation done at Renfro and that we are able to meet and discuss that at a later date. But we wanted to make you aware of it, and we have copies of the letter that we provided to Greg Wiseman today via email. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, if you wouldn't mind trying that form again, that didn't come through, and maybe if a tech could help just to make sure we get your info in, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, and now we're moving on to superintendent's comment.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple things. I just wanted to share, because it came up about the anonymous tip system. We're actually working on that, so we're exploring some options for that. So, and just to be clear for folks who hear it, the governor has proposed a budget that includes safety money, which we're really hoping makes it through, but it's just a proposal at this point. And so we have to wait for it to go through the whole process of getting approved and everything. But it is encouraging that they're thinking about safety measures, so that's a good sign. I want to congratulate Ms. Ruth Scott and Dr. Curtis Armour, our principals at Winona Park and Claremont Elementary School. They went through a very robust process of selection where we went through 2 rounds of interviews, and we had lots of folks involved from the school and from central office, and they are both fantastic leaders that I know are going to do an excellent job, and I'm really looking forward to them working in those positions moving forward. I also want to share a opportunity that just came up, and so I asked Wes Hatfield to come here, and it looks like he brought someone with him. If you guys could come up, I'm going to have them just share that opportunity because it's so new. I don't even know all the details, but it was pretty cool, and I thought you might want to hear about it. So.
Good evening, y'all. I'm actually going to turn it over to Melissa Fry. Melissa is one of our social studies teachers. She's highly involved with the Georgia Council on Economics, and an opportunity presented itself to us through that organization that she will explain.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I have the opportunity to bring 6 students, myself and an administrator, to Japan over spring break. This opportunity is kind of a last-minute opportunity, obviously. The trip is in partnership with the Georgia Council on Economic Education and also the Japanese Society of America. And originally, they had chosen 3 schools in Georgia for this trip. One of the schools recently had to pull out due to administrative concerns, nothing related to the trip. And so because there were 6 spots available, the director of the Georgia Council on Economic Education asked me if I would be able to bring students. The reason why he asked me is because I've done quite a deal of work with them. I write lessons for them from time to time. They are sending me to Cuba at the end of this month, actually, on a trip, mostly for business people involved in economics. And I will be there to write a lesson about economics for high school teachers to use in their classroom in Georgia. So because of my work, they have decided to extend the extra spots for students at Decatur High School. And we have, did you want to go through any of the eligibility?
The great thing about this trip is that other than 2 meals at the airport and souvenirs, it is completely free for students, no cost to students. Because of that, it was important to us in selecting students to participate, that we really live our district mission of providing equitable opportunities. So in selecting students, do y'all have this as a part of your materials? Okay, leave me one if you would. Thank you. So these will all be students that are enrolled in civics and economics, which is our entire freshman class is enrolled in these courses. They need to have shown some strong academic performance in the subject and actively demonstrate a strong interest in economics. It's also important to us that any student selected to go on this trip has not traveled with the school system internationally recently. We want to really make sure we're making opportunities for students that have not had these kinds of opportunities. For reasons of rooming assignments, there is a certain mix of genders that we've been asked to provide. Obviously, if a student who is non-binary were chosen, we would work through that with the organization involved. At least 3 of the students participating will be students that receive free or reduced lunch. Because again, this trip is free, we can really be open about the selection process. We're not asking for any money. And because it's a short timeline, we need to get these selections made obviously quickly. The last bullet that you'll see there is that students must have a passport. Mr. Spruill has been doing a lot of the legwork on this trip, and we are working to make sure that we can get passports for students who may not have them. The DEF has already agreed to fund passports for students who do not have passports. And Ms. Fry today, in working with her liaison at the Georgia Council on Economic Education, has learned that the students don't actually have to have their passports until the week before they travel, which from my international travel experience with students is unusual and was a concern that I had, because typically by 4 or 5 months in advance, you have to have passports submitted and names that match passports and photos submitted. So we really have an opportunity here to select a diverse group of students from the freshman class at Decatur High School and provide probably all of them, honestly, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to travel internationally at no cost.
Very exciting.
So I just wanted to make sure you all knew about that opportunity because it's really great and it's a very short timeline. We don't need approval or anything. Obviously, if you have concerns, we want to hear about that. But we did try to think through a lot of issues, as you noticed, in what they presented here to make sure that it was an equitable opportunity and something we could really take advantage of. And very appreciative to DEF. We knew they would jump in and help out, and they are. So that's great. So.
We'd love a report when the students get back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would just add, because it sounds like an awesome trip, it sounds like a big opportunity and not a lot of time. So I just want to make sure that we're sort of thoroughly vetting things for student safety and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
we kind of just because it fell into our lap so quickly that we know what we're getting ourselves into.
And just to be clear, the reason the two other schools participating are Cambridge High School and McIntosh High School. This has been something that's been vetted by those schools and those school systems. The school that dropped out to allow us to participate was, from our understanding, a lack of follow-through on the part of that school. But we will certainly make sure that everything is vetted for safety reasons.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you
well
both.
done.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Just wanted to say I appreciate the relationships and the partnerships that make these type of things possible. So really appreciate that. Thank you.
And then the final comment, I was going to share kind of an update on some equity things, but I'm going to change my comments a little just to share an example of kind of what I deal with day to day, just as a shining a light on kind of some of the challenges that we face. And I'll give you an example. I received the letter that Mr. Davis read to us and was extremely concerned when I read it, and asked Mr. Wiseman to look into it immediately. We got it a couple hours ago. We were able to track down a couple things right away. And just as an example, the item about the students not being allowed to participate in the event, I've read the entire email string between the teachers, and I understand why that rumor would get started, because the team is pushing very hard for kids to be responsible and to get forms in. And so they had a form for this, and one of the teachers thought, if you don't have the form, then that means you can't go because we've had this initiative of responsibility. Some other teachers corrected them and said, no, that's not the case. Everyone's going to this. This wasn't technically a permission form. It was a notification form. Everybody's going whether they have the form or not, okay? And so they dealt with it internally. They addressed the issue. There was some confusion, very well-meaning, right? They were trying to say, let's teach our kids to be responsible. And it worked the way it's supposed to, right? The staff called each other on it. They pointed out what the challenge is going to be, and they fixed it. But what happens too often is what happened here, which is we get a letter, we get it spoken out in a board meeting, we'll probably get something in a media about it, and then we get our response that says this wasn't an actual thing, right? This was dealt with the way it should be. And I only share that because it's extremely frustrating because we are working so hard on this. And to have things like that get in the way are extremely frustrating. Now, I don't know about the other one. I have heard that the other concern raised is that is because the kids couldn't go because the people who were going to supervise it, volunteers who were going to supervise it, backed out. Okay? Another legitimate reason. I don't know that one yet because we haven't had time to look into it. But I share it because I feel very frustrated that we are trying to do really, really difficult work here, and we are trying to work very hard with the entire community, and it does not help when we are called down on things like this with no goodwill to try to address it ahead of time, with no goodwill to let's investigate it first. It happens, and bam, we're going public with this thing. And I have no problem when we do something wrong to be called on the carpet for it. Absolutely, we should be held accountable for it. But when we're held accountable for something that didn't actually happen, it's extremely frustrating. And so I just share that because I really hope we can do better. We're trying very hard to work with everybody who's interested in this issue. We are trying very hard to be responsive. And when I read that email string, it happened exactly the way it should have happened. The staff called themselves on it. And that's exactly what we want to happen, is for staff to have the cultural humility to say, hey, wait a second, there's some unintended consequences here. You should think about this. And that's exactly what happened in this case.
Can I ask you just a follow-up question about that?
Yep.
did I understand you correctly that the activity that took place in the cafeteria, the students were permitted to go to that activity?
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
And we are investigating it fully, but the principal talked to everyone involved, and my understanding is yes, they did attend. Not to mention the fact, it was a great activity highlighting our African-American culture, and there was no mention of that, of what a great activity it was and the efforts to bring that activity in. And instead, it's accusations that the school's not doing enough, and it's just very frustrating.
Okay, on to chair comments. I too was going to go a certain direction, but I think I'm going to change up a little bit. I can feel and hear your frustration. And being a school board member and being on this side of it, I have felt them myself. I've had conversations with very upset parents and community members, and I know from the seat that I sit in that it is a conversation and a topic that I work on just about every day. And it is sometimes frustrating when the community doesn't think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But I am also on the other side of this, being the only African-American school board member and being a community member and being a parent. And the piece of frustration that you're feeling is one that we feel every day for all of our kids. I've been feeling it for 18 years. And in this journey, there are a lot of highs, but there are a lot of lows, and it's a very exhausting journey. And it is very hard sometimes to hold out hope that everything is going to get better. And then frustration sets in. And that is a normal part of the process, and that's why we have to remind ourselves and come back together about what our goal is in this. It's our children, and it's making sure that the issues that I faced in school and that my mother and father faced in school and that their mother and father faced in school, that my grandchildren won't face the same issues. And it's unfortunate that we're still in a place where they are. And for African American parents, it's beyond frustrating. It's painful. And it brings us to tears. And I would even say that many of us probably suffer from some form of PTSD because of it. And so these are just times where we have to breathe and really listen to each other and almost look beyond what is being said and feel where people are coming from on both sides. Even when you come to us and you have an issue that we need fixed, please know. And I know this, and I would bet the equity on my home in it, that everybody sitting up here's goal is to make this better. It's not moving fast enough for the community. It's not moving in a way that we would like it to, and I get that. But at least know when you come to us, we do have your kids' best interest. And when we hear of issues where the best interests are not, we work on it. And they are just as disappointing to me and to us as they are to you. So I ask that you continue to come and you continue to talk to us and you continue to call me. All of you that call me personally, you can continue to call me. And this being Black History Month, I also want us to take just a moment and revel in the triumphs and the victories that Black people have experienced. And with all the hard work and all the change, we have so many triumphs. And there's so much resilience in our community despite the systematic racial hierarchy that we've lived with our entire time in this US. And so even for activists, sometimes it gets so exhausting, and just make sure that you do that mindful thing that we just did today and be mindful of all of the strides that have been made because of hard work. And we know that our hard work is not going to be in vain. It's not in vain. It's gonna take time and it's gonna be frustrating, but it's not in vain. Board, is there anything else you guys would like to say? Okay. So moving on. Dun, 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 dun. We need like a music. Okay, so consent items. We have the personal report, school nutrition, and financial reports. And also we need to approve the vendor for active panel purchase and installation for Tally Street.
Move to approve the consent items as presented on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved. So moved. We're moving on to informational reports. First one is the behavior. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have to take a vote on that one? Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. We have ayes. Okay, moving on to informational reports, behavior management system.
All
Dr.
right,
Dede.
I'm very pleased, thank you, Ms. White. I'm very pleased to have Maggie Furman come up and give us a overview of the selection process and what we've selected for a behavior management system. You may recall this is one of our conversation topics we had with the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, and they pushed us to say, hey, you've got to get this in place. We said, absolutely, we agree, let's do it. And when you give something to Dr. Furman, it gets done, and it gets done quickly. So she's going to kind of give us a quick overview of where we are with all of that, so thank you.
Well, thank you for having me up here tonight. Just want to give a summary of the background. So what we had school principals do is select members from their school to serve on a district-wide behavior management team. The team came together, and what their first assignment was to gather input from their local schools on what qualities they wanted to see in a district-wide school management plan. So they culminated all their ideas. We summarized it into 4 different tenets for our plans to go forward, and we decided to use those 4 tenets to measure how we were going to rate the different systems we were going to look at. So once we identified those 4 areas, we broke up into subgroups, and each group researched different positive behaviors type systems. We looked at conscious discipline, we looked at management in the active classroom, we looked at responsive classroom, and we looked at PBIS, and we also looked at restorative practices. Each of the small groups gave a presentation to our larger group, and then we rated and scored each of those systems using our rubric that we developed the first time around. And then that information was taken back to cabinet. We presented it at cabinet, and the cabinet members made the final decision on where to go forward. And the final decision was to use, to use the foundation of restorative practices, but to also use the PBIS framework to guide our implementation and monitoring of effectiveness. And the reason we made that decision was the restorative practices really touches on the fundamental equity beliefs that we have in City Schools of Decatur. And the PBIS system is really just a framework to help us implement those consistently and pervasively throughout the district. Will also provide us a platform to track data, so we'll be able to see very quickly if a particular teacher is having an issue in their classroom, if a particular location in a building is where we're seeing discipline issues, so that we can address those in a positive manner. So I'm very proud of the work that was started, and our next phase is to start planning the implementation for kickoff in the fall of 2019. Thank you.
Any questions?
You said kickoff in the fall of 19, so that's when you're planning on implementing it? Okay.
Yes, so we'll work from now up through the summer with each of those teams. We'll be working with the Georgia Department of Education. They have implementation specialists that will come and do the training for us. So each school will have a team working on this, and then going back and training their staff so that we will be ready to go in first day of school in August.
Okay.
And that's every school in the district?
Every school in the district, yes.
And how many people do you think will be on each team, roughly?
It's typically between 7 to 10, just depending on the size of the school. So our larger schools are going to need more members. Smaller schools may need fewer members, but it'll be a sizable team from each school because they have defined roles in PBIS. So you need a coach, you need a behavior specialist, you need a data person, you need an implementation specialist, you need a coordinator. So they identify those roles that we'll have to fill at each school, and then adding members that we want to make sure we're getting wide input from each school.
And so all of the 7 to 10 will be staff or all staff? Okay.
But just to add on that, I am going to be working with Dr. Huddleston on also including a student group to help inform our decisions, and also a parent group.
Great.
Could you, if now isn't the right time, we can do it at a work session or some future date, but could you talk about, for a moment, the supports that the state of Georgia provides, and particularly the area I'm interested in? How will we know when we've arrived?
Yeah.
How do you know at what level of fidelity you're implementing the system?
So we may have a little more information. I went through PBIS at my school before I moved to City Schools of Decatur, and it is a great deal of support. They provide you all the training, all the materials, all the resources to get you up and going for the system. They walk you through, and when we say PBIS, like I said, that's the framework. It's not going to be the type of management system. We're going to be using restorative practices as our foundation and what we put in all the places at our different school locations. So they provide the training support. They also provide coaches for the system. So we've got our first meeting. I think there's 3 or 4 representatives from the state coming to that. So they have a support team for each district. And then what they do also is they'll do audits and walkthroughs. So probably about, once we get up and going, after about 3 months in, they'll send teams out to our schools to interview students, interview staff. They'll ask us, do you know what the expectations are? Do you know what happens when you don't meet the expectations? Because they're also looking for fidelity in our implementation. And then there's ongoing training for coaches and different team members of the PBIS team, so that they are up to date on how to track the data, how to use the platform. And the platform that they use is called Swiss, and that is where all the data will get dumped into, so that we're very quickly able to see where's the differentiation. Are Black students getting disciplined at a higher rate than our white students? And you can watch the graphs on a day-to-day, week-to-week way to see, is it closing? Is it getting better? What do we need to fix?
Thank you.
And I can't remember if you defined it, but can you share the definition of, like, what does PBIS stand for?
Yeah, PBIS is Positive Behavior Intervention System.
Thank you. It sounds like a lot of important work that's going to tie in with our equity work.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I had one more question. So you said that you're just going to be using the PBIS framework. So was there a reasoning for why you didn't want to implement just that whole system? Were there parts of it that...
So PBIS is, like I said, it's a framework. It's a step-by-step way to develop your school-wide, district-wide plan. They don't tell you all the steps you're going to say. They say you decide what do your expectations look like. So your teams work on that together. They tell you, okay, you have to decide between this type of consequence or this type of, they don't tell you what that is. You have to decide what that is. So they just walk you through the steps for developing and monitoring a plan that you will implement at your school.
So that's where the restorative practices
Practice
piece comes in,
right.
is that's our baseline for the pieces where we're making the decisions of how it fits within the framework.
Perfect.
And then at College Heights, they'll be using the program called Conscious Discipline, which has a lot of similar characteristics. They've been using that very successfully, but they'll be doing that within the framework of PBIS also.
I do have a follow-up question, and it goes back to our previous work session where this was discussed. When we talk about using, we're moving forward, and the whole year with restorative practices. This has been on the agenda. It's been moving. One of the things we discussed was restorative practices is about when somebody's entered the discipline system. It's kind of the post-mortem. You know, something happened. Now how do you make it better? At the time that we were discussing this, we talked also, what's the preventative aspect of this? Is that something that is still to follow, or is that part of the framework in its implementation?
So, restorative practices, and there's many other experts in the room, but I'll kind of give you my gist, is that restorative practice has a wide spectrum of implementation. The lowest level of implementation is after the fact. You go through restorative practices questions, you ask the questions, you talk about how this is going to be fixed going forward through some type of restoration. But the furthest implementation, which is what we're going to explore, is stuff like circles. So the students coming together on a weekly basis or a daily basis and talking about the challenges and sharing that. And that's to build the community, because once the students feel engaged in the community, they're less likely to disrupt that community. And that's our goal, is to create as little disruption to our school communities as possible. And when our students are engaged and feel connected to people that they interact with, students and staff, then they're less likely to create those disruptions. So that's the furthest level of implementation that we're going to be striving to succeed at implementing.
And I'll give you another example too. When principals call Dr. Furman or me about a suspension, where they, as you remember, they call us now before they actually implement any suspensions, so we can kind of quiz them a little bit about what happened and make sure it really is an appropriate consequence. One of the other things we ask is, so what can we do to prevent this happening again? Like, what led up to the thing that required you to feel that there needed to be a suspension, so that we can constantly be revisiting that? What were the antecedents that led up to it?
Sorry, another question, follow-up question. So, so I hear the things that the students will be able to do to feel more engaged, and how the students will benefit from restorative justice. But on the other piece of it, how will the teachers be involved? And because as we know, we've seen that Black students are disproportionately sent to the office, for example, and they didn't do anything. So it isn't about a disruption. So the other piece of it, what are we going to see the teachers and administration receiving, so that they're also learning how to manage their class in a way that doesn't exclude?
Yeah, and that's kind of a twofold question. So first of all, I think all the implementation training. So as the team goes out and becomes the trainer of the trainers, they'll come back and re-deliver the protocols to the teachers to help initiate them into this process. And then it becomes about monitoring, and that's where the Swiss system will be very important for us to see. Where are the spikes? Are we seeing one teacher disproportionately sending Black students to the office? Then that's a learning identification for that teacher. What do we need to work on with this teacher to help them develop those relationships with their students, so that they are no longer seeing how the student is acting as the inappropriate? What's the relationship they can build with that student to keep them engaged in the community? The second part is that PBIS does so beautifully is it will help us build lessons for teachers to teach our students. And when the teachers have created the lessons and they've created this unified system, it will keep consistency from one side of the school to the other. It will keep consistency from school to school. So as students rise up through the system, they will get very much indoctrinated into the positive behavior expectations that will be set forth in each school. And I can tell you, having been in a school for 5 years, starting it and watching the students come up from kindergarten up to the middle school, it decreases significantly the number of instances that come up, because the kids know what is expected, and it doesn't change ever. So they knew from kindergarten through 12th grade, this is what we expect. The teachers knew from kindergarten to 12th grade, here's how we address these issues, through teaching students the right behavior to replace the behavior that we're not looking for, and that community building. So through the circles and developing those relationships.
Thank you, Dr. Furman.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to Tally Street Upper Elementary School update.
All right. You may remember that we are opening a brand new school. Yeah, amazing, isn't it? So I asked Mr. Heaton to come so that he could share kind of where we are with a wide variety of things. And this is an item that we intend to have on the agenda moving forward until that school gets open, and maybe even a little bit after, if there's still things happening with kind of getting it off the ground. So take it away.
Good evening. I'm Billy Heaton, principal of Tally Street Upper Elementary School. Very excited to hear about Principal Scott and Dr. Armour. They're going to be feeder schools into Tally, along with Dr. Beam, and so I'm really excited about working with them. Also very excited that I'm single-handedly focused on Tally Street. For the last couple of months, I was transitioning from Claremont to Tally, and now I'm full-fledged over in the facilities and maintenance building and right next to the site, and really getting to see a lot of the progress that the school's making. So it's very exciting. So just wanted to share a little bit of update with you. This is a shot or a picture that you guys have probably already seen. I had asked Noel if it was okay to show, and he said yes. You all had seen this this drawing of what the outside of Talley Street would look like, and this is looking from the view as if you're going down Talley Street towards the city building. That's another view of the Talley Street side. And then this would be the back of the building where our playground is. The building over to the right with all the glass is going to be the gymnasium. I shared these pictures with you just to give you a little bit of idea as I share the pictures now of how really it's looking. This is as of yesterday. So these are very, very current. It's a little muddy out there, but a lot of progress is being made. The view that you're looking at now is the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and the music room. So they are coming right along. This is the brickwork that's on the outside. My understanding is the brickwork will go up about halfway, and then you will have some type of tile or what would be the exact? Above the window. Metal. And it's going to look really, really nice. This is in the same general area, and this is where the entrance on the car rider sign or car rider side will. Parents will come in, park, and then they'll be able to walk their child into the front door, which you'll be able to see here in a few minutes. The windows are going in, so I thought that was very, very exciting. The window to the left is the assistant principal's office, and the one that's not quite in right yet will be my office, and then the one on the other side is from a side view. Picture on the left is our cafeteria, and it is really a large cafeteria. I'm very, very pleased with the side. My understanding is it's considered like a service cafeteria where other meals for other schools will be able to be made and sent out to the other schools, so it's really nice. It's going to fit about 20 lunchroom tables in there, and so I'm really excited about that. The picture to the right is the music room. This is the gymnasium, and it is a full-size gymnasium with a basketball court. My PE coach, Coach Nichols, who was our teacher of the year at Claremont, she is coming over to Talley, and she is thrilled because, you know, she's been teaching PE in the pavilion in all kinds of weather, and I've been out there observing her in all kinds of weather, and I'm excited that she will have a gymnasium. So we're really excited about that. This is a stage that is actually in the gymnasium as well, so we'll be able to promote different plays and performances and things like that. We do plan to pursue orchestra just like they have at Fave, and so some of the performances that are happening at Fave will also be happening at Talley. This is the courtyard view. So if you would continue down past the side of the building, that would be the back playground. This is the entrance from the Talley Street side. So all that you see right there will be glass. So it's going to be really beautiful. This is the library on the left, a very nice size library. And then this is a typical shot of a classroom. Nice size, they average about 758 square feet. So I think that's a good size classroom, and lots of bright light from the window. So I know teachers are going to be very excited. This is just another picture of a classroom. So you see the insulations going in there. Lots of insulation, so they're going to be warm classrooms, which is going to be great. I thought this was an amazing feature of the school building. There are actually windows in the back of the classrooms, and so they're security windows. So they'll be open during the day. But if there was ever an incident, we would have security shades that we would be able to drop down that would provide privacy for the classroom. So that's a very unique feature that I've never seen in any other school. So I thought that was exciting. This is the back of the building. Again, that's the gym that you'll see there with all the glass. Door frame, not an exciting picture, but when you grew up in construction and you start seeing door frames in buildings, you know that the building is starting to come together for completion. Again, this is the entrance size from the Tally Street. I thought that was just an amazing view on the left. That is from a classroom from the second level looking out towards the carpool line. I thought that was just such a neat picture. And then on the right is coming down Tally Street. You'll see that the open space up there is going to remain open. That is a very unique feature to the school, as well as an open terrace. And again, I haven't seen anything like that in the school, so I'm really excited about that. It connects to our art room and our makerspace room, so I know they'll be able to do some fun things out there. So just a few more things. We've already formed our SLT. Our SLT came from parents and teachers from all the feeder schools into Tally. So we have parents from Claremont, Glenwood, Winona Park, and Fave. We have already voted on our school colors, which I'm going to share with you here in just a minute. We are hot and heavy into the process of choosing our school mascot. I've personally gone around to all the schools. Last one tomorrow or Thursday is Winona Park, and I've actually got to speak face-to-face with all the second, third, and fourth graders about the selection process for the mascot, and they are very, very excited.
Can I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
Because Mr. Heaton came to my son's classroom today, so at dinner, I heard that this rock star showed up. And that there were all these kids from Claremont who just said, like, there was this amazing person who came, and he even remembered your name was Billy. Not Mr. Heaton, but Billy. But he was super excited because he saw his friends so excited about the principal, so just wanted to share that.
Yeah, it was great. I've only been out of the building for a couple weeks, and it gets really quiet over there in facilities and maintenance. So it was great to be around kids again. Some of the things that the SLT will help with is creating the bylaws. The SLT that we have developed now will not be the initial SLT for the school. Once we have determined the bylaws, those members that are on the SLT currently, if they choose to stay, would have to go through the same election process as all the other schools. And so that will happen in the fall. They'll also help us begin to write a draft mission and vision statement that will go before the faculty and other parent stakeholders in the fall for approval. Again, they're about the vote, and the last week in February, I'm meeting with some representatives from the different PTAs of the feeder schools, and we're starting to have those conversations about beginning our PTA and fundraising and all that as well. Those are the Tally Street colors. That's not purple. That is actually Carolina blue. Silver is the main color. Silver, navy blue, and white are the secondary colors. So it definitely looks like a North Carolina Tar Heel, but that was not the
Yes, I love
purpose.
this. I love this. That's part of the meeting.
The colors do look phenomenal. We definitely wanted to make sure with the 4 schools that are coming to Tally that we didn't have anything that the other students would be able to say, oh, well, that's Winona's colors, or those are Claremont's colors. So really looking at all the different colors that we offer in the school district, and this is something very different. So we're really excited. We also think it's going to look great on a T-shirt and a ball cap. So we're really excited about that.
Now I'm gonna have to send my daughter there. I gotta figure out how to get my daughter over there.
So lastly, the Tally Street mascot, we have developed a survey, went around to the schools and showed the students, held it up and showed exactly what the survey was looking like. Gonna send it out to their principals tomorrow. They'll actually complete the survey in school before they go home for winter break. A survey is going out to parents on Thursday in the e-blast, which is the same survey, but it will go directly to parents. And I've already sent out the survey to our new Tally staff, and they're beginning to send in choices as well. It's going to be very interesting to hear some of the choices. The questions I've been getting: does it have to start with a T? Does it have to be an animal? Can it be a dinosaur? So I'm really loving some of the choices that are already coming in. So the SLT is going to narrow it down to 3 to 5, and then we'll send it back out there for everyone else to make the final decision. And I'm working with Courtney Burnett to develop our school's webpage, and I'm trying to think of some fun way to reveal our school mascot via the school webpage. So lots of fun things happening at Tally Street, and real pleased with the progress. And one student did ask me today at FAVE, is it going to open in August? And I said, absolutely. So I have no doubt. I just want to give kudos to Noel and the crew. They've been doing some phenomenal work out there. And every week when I go out there, it seems to be making more and more progress. So it's just going to be a very beautiful school.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they're lucky to have you, Mr. Heaton. So thank you
I
for all your
appreciate
hard
it.
work.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. I have
Can you
one.
give a quick update on the staffing process so that folks know where we are with that?
Sure. The school system created a staffing interest survey where teachers could identify their preference. We started with current third grade teachers to see where they wanted to go, and then from there we moved it down to the other grade levels like K2. We had a very thorough process where all the principals were in the room, and we built our third, fourth, and fifth grades first with FAVE and Tally. And since then, we have gotten our special ed allotments, so we are starting to get our special ed teachers. We've got enough information now with the job fair coming up on Saturday. We know exactly the slots that we need to fill. So kudos to David Adams for that process, because he's worked really hard going back and forth with principals. I feel the teachers are very pleased. I feel like they had a say in what school they wanted to go to, and I haven't heard one negative piece of feedback from teachers about the process that we've gone through. So I'm really pleased, very excited. The teacher that was actually here with her students tonight is going to be a Tally teacher, and chances are 75% of the Winona Park kids will be Tally students, since we're splitting 75-25 from Tally and FAVE. But it was a very detailed process. I do feel like teachers' voices were heard. We also looked at certifications to make sure that was balanced, because I have been in other school districts where that wasn't always the case in terms of opening new schools. And so seeing the staff that I'm getting and the certifications and the quality, just really excited about that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
May I ask a question, or is that not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm just interested. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about, because I can sense your, first of all, thank you, and I can sense your enthusiasm, and I'm interested. You mentioned something about Tally getting an orchestra and doing that because FAVE has that, and I'm interested if you could talk just a minute about your collaboration with FAVE and maybe with the existing SLT to try to mirror the bylaws, or just talk a little bit about how we are going to have two upper elementaries that are equitable, so that we're not having one that has certain things and one that has others, or that,
Right.
that I know they're not maybe going to be perfectly equitable, but what kind of efforts are being made to ensure that we have similar opportunities?
I'm having daily conversations with Principal Newton. We definitely want to make sure that anything that's offered at FAVE, we have the same opportunities for our students at Tally. In terms of SLT and bylaws, that's one of the process that we're going to use. We're going to use a protocol. We have current copies from all the feeder schools, SLT bylaws, including FAVE's, and we're going to go through a process of identifying areas of the bylaws from the different feeder schools to create tallies. So it should be very in line with all the other schools that are coming to Tally.
Okay.
I think it's going to be an ongoing process. We are 3-5 schools, only 2 together. I've been in a middle school principal before where there was only one other middle school in the district, and it's very important to work very closely with the other principal just to make sure you're giving equitable opportunities for all of the kids from both schools.
Yeah. I'm very grateful that you're able to focus on this. We're very lucky that you're able to do that and to think of all the
thank
details.
You all, because it's really allowing me to spend the time to really put in the work that it's going to take, and I think we're going to have a very successful opening of the school. So
I agree. It will definitely pay off. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Billy.
Okay, so now we're moving on to action items, the board policy manual.
Okay, so the board policy manual item has several things in it. One, it has an updated manual numbered 1.3.0, and that is based on the updates that we discussed at the last board meeting. There's both a normal version and a red line version, so you can see the differences between the one that was approved previously and this one. And then additionally, I've gone and there's a long list of policies there. We have done a crosswalk of our existing board policies, which use those NSBA identifier codes, which are just letters, AA, AE, AF, whatever. And if there was an existing policy in the new policy manual, we're recommending we rescind that. All of the policies in the previous board manual, every policy has been assigned to a cabinet member or to me, and we are going through policy by policy to make sure we have gleaned any important details out of them and put them into administrative regulations. So you will see administrative regulations coming out again on a regular basis as we do that work. So the recommendation here is that we approve the version 1.3.0 manual and the rescission of the board policies as listed in the summary section of that item. And then I've also shared with the board another version. You know, the policy manual is a constant work in progress. I emailed out a 1.3.1 to you all, and actually we're going to have a 1.3.2 to send out pretty soon because there were a couple sentences we needed to get added in there. So be looking for that one, but we can talk about that one in a later time. Any questions or anything I can cover on this?
Any further discussion, board members?
The only question I really had was the discussion about the kind of the timing. We've discussed this in the past of the legal review, and I have some small concerns that we have the language in there that our existing policies basically preempt the previous policies. I'm just curious to gauge the full board's perspective on how far we want to go with rescinding policies before we've had the legal review to make sure that we've covered all the bases.
Have we done the legal review?
So we haven't done the legal review of the entire manual as one piece because we were waiting for
kind of a
this
catch-22.
process. It is kind of a catch-22. We certainly can do that if you'd like. I think the thinking was we didn't want to keep paying for reviews as it was developing. We have had legal review about specific administrative regulations where it was clear we really needed to make sure an attorney looked this over. They did give their input on the original version of the policy manual, and they're the ones who suggested like that sentence on the front cover, for instance, and things like that. So I would not recommend that we're rescinding these if I didn't feel comfortable we were covered, but if the board wants to hold off and leave them in place, it's really not a problem. If you feel better just moving forward with the manual, and we'll rescind those at some other date, that with that sentence on the cover, it's okay if we decide to go that route. It's just we're trying to get things cleaned up so that there's not a lot of confusion amongst the community and the staff of what exactly rules are we following. And so that's why I tried to get this forward of let's get there as fast as we can so that folks know there's one policy manual, right? And that's what you're following, that and the administrative regulations. So that's where we are, but we certainly can do those at a different time as well. That would be just fine.
Have we run this sentence by our outside counsel to see if they're comfortable with
I think
that?
it actually came from them, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I thought maybe Lewis and I had come up with it at the last meeting. I thought we were.
Well, I think that the original version came from them, and I think we might have tweaked a couple words in it.
Okay.
So are we comfortable moving forward?
Let me. I'm comfortable.
Heather?
Yes.
Garrett?
Okay.
Okay, so the question,
So we just need a motion for.
motion to approve the draft version 1.30.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
Can we still, I'm comfortable moving forward, but can we still have our outside counsel review this so if we need to make any changes, we can?
Mhm.
feel
Like,
we
go ahead with this and then send all of that to them for review before the next meeting? Is that what you're
I
saying?
think so. I
Or-
mean, I feel like we're sort of at like we've got a critical mass here where it makes sense, I think, to do that.
So like have an interim review right now?
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be nice if we could also start striking things off that appendix.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there will actually be quite a few you'll see in 1.3.2.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so motion to approve version 1.3 of the Board of Education Policy Manual.
So moved.
And are we rescinding the policies too,
I
right?
believe
Are we
it
doing the
has-
full recommendation, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Subject to the ones that are required by state or federal law.
Correct.
Okay, seconded?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion is approved. Alrighty, and now we're moving on to discussion items. And it's the templates for board policy monitoring reports and responses.
All right, so one of the things with policy governance, obviously, is you've got this whole process of monitoring, and that's one of the key components of policy governance. So we put some work into developing some templates because we think it'll be much more efficient and much more easily understood if all of these reports look exactly the same in terms of their format and what content we expect to be there. So you'll see a policy monitoring report template, and then you'll also see a board response to a policy monitoring report template, because you may recall it's a two-stage process. The administration puts together a report on a given policy or more than one policy and submits it to the board for consideration. We discuss it at a meeting, and then the board responds. And so I put both of those templates in there. We developed them by looking at a whole bunch of different reports from lots of different school districts that do policy governance, and tried to take the best from each of them and put together that template. So happy to have whatever feedback you have on those. And clearly the board response, you've got to feel comfortable with that, because that will be your report, but we just wanted to kind of ease the transition and throw something out there. You'll notice on the board response, I was talking with Lewis about how does that actually get written, because it's very hard to write a document in committee. And so you'll notice it's set up as a framework of we have the discussion, and then one board member writes the response and submits it back to the board based on the discussion, but it's not approved until the whole board has a chance, much like minutes, for instance. They're basically writing minutes of the discussion in a report format, and then the whole board sees that draft. And once the whole board says, yes, that's what we said, everything that needed to be there is there, then it's finalized, and now that is an official response to the administration at that point. So that's kind of the process we were thinking through, trying to figure out how to keep it efficient. And you all can decide if maybe that's the same person every time, or maybe it rotates who does it when, or whatever. Maybe you have some sort of schedule.
I think it should always be Lewis.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
There you go. Should we vote on that
So
right now?
moved.
I second.
So, so that's what that is, just so you know.
Okay.
That's why there's a little thing about where you sign off saying, yeah, I did my best to represent what the board said. But the board always has the opportunity then to say, well, we didn't quite say that, or let's get this changed a little, or whatever. So
I think this looks great. I appreciate that it has places for comments, including potential changes to the board policy. So I think that'll help kind of prompt us a little bit to continue those discussions and sort of invite revisions as appropriate. I noticed that you've already checked the box is in compliance
you know, I
on the
figured
right.
that
Is
we might
just-
as well start.
Okay, fair enough.
I actually just didn't want to have to
That's
go
just-
find that special character later, so I just put it in there.
Great template. It's already completed for you.
That's right.
Yeah, this looks great.
It's obvious that you've done a tremendous amount of work. We saw kind of the work in progress as you sent out your
Yeah.
request for feedback earlier this month, and it was clear that you had really done a thorough job of evaluating a lot of different examples of how this is done in other places and picked the best aspects of each one to get here. I think these seem very usable. I'm looking forward to starting to use them, and then I think it will be a lot easier to actually give feedback, and we'll tweak them then, because a lot of this is hard to tell exactly how it's going to feel until we're using them. But that, and also in addition to the work that you and your cabinet are doing on all of the policy work, and that you've distributed that amongst your staff on top of everything that they're already doing, is really fantastic. And so this is just a tremendous step forward for us to really be able to streamline and go through all our policies and our procedures and then have a process for monitoring them, which, you know, is extremely important to make sure that they stay relevant and that we continue to stay familiar with each and every one of them, because there's a lot of policies, there are a lot of ARs, and if we all know what's there, including you know, everyone on the cabinet having the opportunity to read through all of them and provide feedback, it really is going to work so much better for us. So thank you for all of your work that you're doing on that.
And you made a really good point that while I say we want every report to look the same, as we start them, we are definitely going to say, wow, that didn't quite work the way we thought, or we need this additional information. And so these will definitely be living templates. I'm glad you brought that up. So if you have any feedback on these that you haven't provided, please feel free to email me. And as we start the schedule, these are the templates we'll use. And like we said, we can tweak them as we go.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And if you want, I can jump right into the next one.
Go right ahead.
So the next one is a template for action plans, which is somewhat related to policy governance and somewhat not. You know, we've talked a lot about action plans in my time here, and I decided it's just time we need a template because there are so many aspects of an action plan, and I sent out a bunch of samples to you all to get some feedback of what things you liked in them. And again, we tried to do the best of everything in this template. And what we intend to do is use this template moving forward for whatever action plans we have, whether it's a wellness action plan or an equity action plan or whatever the action plans are. And then these action plans are probably, a lot of these will just be like a subcomponent of like a strategic plan, for instance. So rather than put out every single detail in the strategic plan, you might say, oh, let's do a separate plan because this is such a big topic. And so what you'll see here, some of the key components that have not always been present in our plans. One is the executive summary, which is very helpful. And you'll notice I put in brackets under each kind of what questions are you answering in this section, so that as administrators go to use this, they know, like, what is this section about? What kind of things should I answer? You'll see in the introduction, there's the background, there's the development, what was the process, who was involved, what data were used, and what is the related research, what evidence leads to whatever theory of change we used. And then in the action plan itself, you have this desired outcome. Oftentimes that'll be an ends policy statement. That is the desired outcome, is whatever that end statement is. That's the ultimate outcome of the entire plan, okay? And then you have your theory of change. And so that'll say something like, you know, we will implement PBIS so that we reduce disproportionality in discipline, so that and you go through a series of research-based best practices so that we get to the desired outcome, which is whatever that is, okay? So that's kind of how that works. We talk about the overall timeline. So this first part is kind of an overall summary of the plan. What's the timeline? What resources are needed? What challenges do we anticipate? This is something that I really liked seeing in one of the reports, and you'll see it incorporated throughout here, is what are the risks? Because every time you're always taking risk when you start doing actions. It may be the risk of investing money in something that ends up not working, right? So there are risks involved. The goals, this is, from the goals on, you'll see I actually took part of our equity action plan because, like to Heather's point, it's really hard to tell if a template makes sense until you get some actual content. Well, this was so complex, I could not figure out if it made sense without content in it, and it really helped. So the section that says goals is where you would just see a list of those high-level goals from the action plan. So there are however many there, I only did one in this template. Then under details, we define every single piece of what you're going to see in the action plan itself. So under details, those are just definitions. What is a goal? What is an action? What's a desired outcome? What's an action step? So that people can understand the components they're seeing in the further pages. And because we use things, like we use a thing we call MOCA. And MOCA is a way of us figuring out who does what. Right? Who's the manager? Who's the owner? Who needs to be consulted? And so that would be new to some people. Well, all the definitions are there of what MOCA is, what those roles mean, et cetera. And then you'll just see we've laid out, like, for each goal, there's going to be multiple actions. For each action, there may be desired outcomes. What are the steps of the actions? What are the resources needed? What risks are we taking in implementing that action? Who's doing what? And then we just lay it out. So you'll see, like, it's going to be a pretty considerable, it's a heavy lift, right? It's a pretty considerable document, but we feel like by really thinking through the steps of these, we'll really have a much better understanding of what we're doing and a much better way of communicating to people what we're doing. And then for every goal, you have indicators, and the indicators are usually of two types. One that I would call installation, which means you're just doing something, right? You're hosting a workshop, or you're getting people trained, or you're implementing PBIS. And then you have goals that I would call realization. And so you can see the final goal is a sample of a realization. By the end of 1920, 30% of employees will be at some level on some assessment of cultural humility. So it's like an actual assessment of some end characteristic. So a lot of times in action plans, you have installation goals. We'll try to always have at least one set of actual realization goals that measure whatever it is you're trying to get to. And then we have the appendices where, we're really good at putting out a lot of data, but not always good at putting it in here. So you'll have the appendix about the data. You'll have an appendix with any research that might be relevant, that may be like endnotes, basically, of what you reference. And then, of course, the final appendix is the glossary, because you know how much we love our acronyms in education. And so the goal will be to define any acronym that's used anywhere in the document. So that's our plan moving forward. Again, we would love any feedback you have. And again, it'll be a living document. And as we use it, I'm sure there will be challenges as we go. So any questions or comments on that one?
That's a lot of work. That's
It is a lot of work.
amazing.
I think it's going to be a huge time saver because I feel like you're going to have a very clear expectation, and you are not going to be reinventing the wheel every time.
Right.
And at the same time, this is going to really make people cut to the chase of what action-oriented things do we need. And I just think it's going to be fantastic. We're going to have a lot more consistency, and I feel like we're going to start out a step ahead each time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Should I keep going? I'm on a roll. Oh, you have a comment?
To what extent, and we have discussed this a little bit, do you view the action plans as serving the dual purpose of driving internal change management versus, we have an equity action plan, we have people show up at board meetings who want to know about the equity action plan, or the board is in its monitoring reports, so it's not dual purpose, it's tri-purpose, of monitoring reports on are we making reasonable progress towards achieving our equity ends. How does this fit?
So a couple things. The reason the first parts of this action plan are so verbose is for that community-facing piece, right? So that folks who pick this up understand what happened before, how did we get to the point we're at, why did we make the decisions we made, et cetera. The pieces where you get into the nitty-gritty detail, like starting on page 5, that's really very administration-focused, right? This is hey, we're going to check off and go through step by step. Anybody might be interested in that, but most people won't want to get into that level of detail. They just want to know if you're actually making the change that you want to make, right? The indicators will largely align with the same data that we're presenting as part of our monitoring policies, right? So the chances of an indicator also being on a monitoring report are really high, right? So they'll have that connection between the two. There's a whole nother piece of this that I didn't put in the action plan, but it's like once you have your action plan and you do, say, a 9-month review of where are you, there will be a whole new pieces of the action plan where you do like your 9-month update. Like where are we with everything at this point in time? So that's there as well. You just don't see it in this one because we haven't done one yet.
Well, I really appreciate the distinction between the install versus the realize, because the policy governance aspect, our focus is more on the realization.
Correct.
I think in that 9-month review, and I've already mentioned this, but I'm mentioning this here, one thing that I think would be helpful for the board is to get that kind of post-op perspective on where were we, what did we plan, what did we actually do?
Exactly.
What did we plan to what did we budget? What did we actually, expend?
Yep.
What did we expect the outcomes to be? What were the outcomes?
Exactly.
So I know we're having this conversation, and I look forward. I'm really very excited. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's very organized. At the same time, we're not predetermining everything. We're giving ourselves the flexibility to adapt and change and improve.
And that's a really good point, because when we do a review after however many months or years or whatever, if things aren't working, we're not going to just keep doing them, right? That's when you get version, 1.2 of the plan or whatever, right? Like you change it. And I think too often people think, hey, I've got a 5-year plan. for 5 years, I have to do what's in that plan, whether or not 3 years in, we see it has
Not
failed
working.
miserably,
Right.
right? So all of these will be living documents that we will update as needed.
And, you know, I think I've mentioned this, I'm going to plant the seed. You know, sometimes people talk about needs assessments versus assets, you know. They talk about the preventative versus the, you know, do we praise or do we punish? And I have heard in public education kind of a concern that public education is dominated by a compliance mentality. And there may be differing opinions, but when I hear compliance, to me that has a negative connotation, like you're out of compliance. Whereas perhaps maybe a different way, and I don't have the right verbiage, but to recognize the accomplishment as opposed to the compliance. How can we focus this? And I'm thinking of Billy, he's not here anymore. You know, but when we work, like your tremendous work on the budgeting process to give principals equitable access to resources, but to maximize their freedom to use those resources as they see fit. I hope that the board can do something similar where we're giving you those executive limits, which are minimal expectations, but leave you the freedom to accomplish much more without boxing you into a conformity or a compliance mindset. So.
Okay.
That's good.
All right, moving on.
Let's move on.
The board work plan item, as we started working, you know, there was the draft work plan that we talked about at the last meeting. As we started talking as a cabinet about how to monitor all these things, we realized that we really need to be focusing on the monitoring calendar first. How do we monitor every one of these policies? And so we put together this spreadsheet you see there that basically it just has every single policy in there, which will need to be updated now, but every policy. And then we thought through of, are there certain scheduling considerations with any given policy? Like when is the milestones assessment data received or something like that? There may be some constraints. So you'll see in that column we put like, what are those constraints? Some things can be monitored anytime. Some things there's certain times of year. Some things you'll see like it says with 1.3B 1 and 2 because it would be natural to put two different policies together because they're really talking about the same thing, et cetera. And then once we had the scheduling considerations in place, we put together a chart that tried to balance out through the 12 months, kind of splitting those things up. And so I'd like to recommend we kind of take this approach, and as we add new policies, we'll figure out where it goes in there. And then if we there were some special topics that were on that other document we looked at last time. And what I would highly recommend is if we feel strongly enough about one of those special topics, that's probably an indicator it should have a board policy statement. And that the answer isn't to have two calendars. The answer is to have a policy statement to go with whatever that other really important thing is that we want to see, so that it gets incorporated automatically. There are some exceptions, but we can figure out how we want to document some of those as we go. But for the most part, I feel like anything that's important to the board should probably be reflected in the board policy manual and therefore should be part of a monitoring report. Now, the one section we did not complete is section 3 because that's the board's policies, and we didn't want to be presumptuous of how those are going to get monitored. But that at some point we may want to have a work session or something to talk about how does the board want to monitor your implementation of your own policies. But that can be a topic for a future conversation. Any questions or comments on all that?
Again, this is a lot of, I can tell you put in a lot of work and thought into, how to just streamline everything, and it does take a lot up front in order to make everything easier on the back end. So, this is a great job. I think it'll be very helpful when we're trying to figure out what we want to discuss or go over. I don't necessarily have any changes or anything. Like you said, it's a living document. So if we see things that aren't quite working, we can tweak them.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
It's, slowly building, slowly the pieces are coming into place, and I'm looking forward to what we'll do.
So what we're going to do then is we'll do our best to get at least one, if not all, of the March monitoring reports together as a first example of an actual monitoring report. It'll be a little challenging with winter break and stuff, but we will do our best to get a monitoring report put together for the next board meeting, which according to the schedule. So we will do that, and then that's when it really gets fun, because we'll have some actual reports to look at.
Thank you.
They're all pulling up their calendars right now to see who had the March ones.
Okay.
All right.
So the next item on discussion is child abuse prevention.
Yeah, so I asked Diane Thompson to come and talk to us a little bit about our child abuse prevention activities and whatnot. So Diane, could you take it away?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent and Board. Thanks for having me here tonight. So we are just trying to make sure that all of our programming is up to date. There is a law out there, and it's Georgia 20-2-143, and I should have brought my glasses. This is not a new law. It's actually been in place since the 1980s, I think roughly 1988. But as with many laws, there are updates that happen, and in 2018, there was in fact an update to this law. So when I came into City Schools of Decatur last year, one of the things I did was went and met with the different school counseling programs to see where we were programmatically. And one of the things I realized in this area in particular was that our counselors were using, they were all doing some type of programming, but it was varied programming. Some of them had antiquated materials. So I met with the elementary counselors last year, and we started to look at different programs and what did we want to do as a group. And so we looked at several different programs and ultimately settled on Think First, Stay Safe. It is a evidence-based program. It is currently in 7,000 schools in 43 states. More locally, it is being used as the prevention program in Gwinnett County, DeKalb, Fulton, Forsyth, Rockdale, Barrow, Habersham, and Oconee County in Georgia. I'm very familiar with this program. I did bring it to my last school district that I worked at, and it's a very effective program. One of the other place that this is listed, there is actually a thing out there. It's Georgia's Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Prevention Technical Assistance Resource Guide. It was actually created in 2017, and Think First, Stay Safe is one of the top programs that is listed. And one of the things it says in the research is that it's critical that you have a common language and you be teaching common skills. So that's really our goal. I know we all want to keep our students safe, and this one I feel like is it's not just about sexual abuse. This one hits what the law requires with also looking at sexual assault and prevention education. And so we're hoping to move forward and roll this out. There are several key concepts that can be taught, that are taught at all grade levels. They're taught in the youngest grades, and then they're reviewed. Several really positive things about this program. One is that there is flexibility to make it work for your specific community. So, for example, we looked at things like in kindergarten, they're old enough to learn about the pet lore. Adults don't need to ask kids to come and help them to find pets. They should find another adult to help them. So, we looked at it developmentally. The counselors and I all sat down. We looked through all of the different concepts that need to be taught, and we laid out what we thought would be the most developmentally appropriate, which is what the law requires. The other thing I really like about this program is that it is kept very up to date, and there is a whole parent resource section available on the website. So for those few parents who may decide that they don't want their child to participate, there's a way for them to go and have the conversation in a way that fits for their family as well. So we actually have another resource that we can give them.
Nice.
Any
Thank you
questions
very
or
much.
comments? Thanks, Diane. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Diane.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Courtney for legislative updates.
Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff happening. I'll
fun,
let
fun.
Courtney take it away, and then I may have some stuff to supplement with.
Sitting over there trying to catch up on all the reports coming in from today.
Yeah.
So we'll see if I'm even up to date. So the pace is starting to pick up. It was really boring for the last couple of weeks. People were just kind of getting organized. Committees weren't really doing anything, and then all of a sudden, Thursday, Friday last week, and today, they got moving. So I'll just let you know a couple of things that are happening so far, and then a couple of things that we're watching pretty closely. So far, The supplemental budget has already been passed by the House. It's moving, it's flying, so that's really good. And the Senate started subcommittee hearings today, or actually yesterday on this. The biggest news with the supplemental budget is are the $30,000 safety grants that the governor proposed, and those are for each school. So that nobody has the House didn't touch that, the Senate hasn't touched that, so that looks good for going forward, and we'll get more information on how that's supposed to be spent once it comes out. The Senate passed Senate Bill 25, and this is actually the House equivalent committee. The Senate has already passed it too, so this bill's flying as well. This bill corrected a mistake made last session regarding cars stopping for stopped school buses. So it said you didn't have to stop if there wasn't a physical medium, which is wrong. And so they're trying to correct that. So it's like they're basically said Scott Boulevard, you wouldn't have to stop for a school bus on the other side. But they're reversing that now. And so, as you know, Senate Bill 53 has passed the Senate, and that's the one that would cause problems if and when properties are annexed into Decatur. And so, thank you to everybody that's been communicating with the DeKalb delegation on that. I think that will help us get our point across. But I think the next steps for all of us are to reach out to the bill sponsor, Emmanuel Jones, and register our concerns and the same talking points that we've been sharing with the other delegation members. So just let him know that this is an issue. And I will be down at the Capitol tomorrow for the Charter System Legislative Workshop, and so I'm going to try to do my best to pull delegation members, if I can, to talk to them as well. And so we'll see where it goes from there. We're going to watch for the committee to come up. Were you going to share on that?
Yeah, I'll just update that I had a great conversation with Senator Parent today. And she's well aware of our concerns and appreciated hearing from us. And I think we ended up talking for probably a half hour or more about this bill. So it was a great conversation. And she knows that it's something we're looking at. She knows what the issues are and is just aware of all of it. And I shared with her, we understand why it's there and what the concerns are as well. And so they're just looking forward to figuring something out to make it so that it's not just quite the bill that it is right now, but kind of finessing it a little bit so that it makes a lot more sense for situations like annexing one house, for instance, and just how complicated that would make things if that actually became the law. So it was a great conversation. I also plan to reach out to Dr. Green just to speak with him a little bit, the superintendent for DeKalb Schools, and just make sure he knows kind of our thoughts on it, and so that I can share with him what that is, and he can share with me whatever he wants to share as well. So I'm going to try to do that later this week.
That's great. Courtney, could you share with us the contact information for Emmanuel Jones just later?
Sure can.
Email us. Thank you.
So those are the things that are really moving around right now. There's bills being proposed. They're still dropping bills, and we're only in day 12, I think. So we will continue to see bills drop, and we'll see where they go from there. So a couple of things. I have 3 things that we're watching pretty closely. One is dyslexia. Dyslexia is a big topic at the Capitol this year. There was a study committee this summer on dyslexia, and now there's several competing bills that have been proposed on both the Senate and the House side. Senate Bill 48 is the bill that came out of the study committee, and the Senate Education Chair is the sponsor of this bill, so this is the one that's likely to actually move. The chair said at the last meeting when he brought it forward that the bill needed additional work and that he would be bringing a substitute. So I don't even know what the substitute looks like yet. So they didn't even discuss it in the committee, but I think they're supposed to have a committee meeting tomorrow afternoon. So hopefully while I'm there, I can go sit in on that committee meeting and hear what they have to say. So stay tuned on that one. Calendar. There was another Senate study committee this summer that talked about calendar, and this one is concerning. And there's a bill has not been dropped on this one yet, just the committee recommendations, and I haven't heard if a bill's coming. I'm going to ask a couple of questions on that tomorrow with the charter system people to see what they have heard. But a couple of things that are particularly concerning about this one, the recommendations. The committee recommendations took away the calendar decision-making from the school systems and put it in the hands of the legislature by placing guardrails around the start and end dates. And so what that means is schools will be required to start no earlier than approximately 7 to 10 days prior to the first Monday in September and end on or about June 1st. So that takes away 2 breaks basically for us, is what that would do. So that's something we're going to be watching very closely. And then lastly, the Keeping Georgia's Schools Safe Act. That's Senate Bill 15. That's the one the governor talked about in the State of the State address. There was a substitute bill brought forward yesterday to the Senate Public Safety Committee, and the committee chair is still asking for additional revisions to that bill, and so we may see another substitute coming forward. So I don't know if the current items will stay in the bill, but I'll just tell you a couple of things that are in there. There's going to be additional requirements for school systems for threat assessments. The bill, as it is written right now, is creating a system managed by the Georgia Information Sharing Analysis Center for flagging threats and allowing the GBI to create student profiles that identify reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. There was a lot of discussion about that one, apparently, at the Public Safety Committee, if you can imagine. And then the other thing is the bill provides for safety coaches to work with school districts, and those safety coaches will be trained by GMA and Homeland Security. So that's all I have, unless you have questions.
So I just want to say how much I appreciate having Courtney on our staff, because as well as anyone can, she actually understands how all that stuff works and keeps track of it. I don't think anyone truly understands the whole thing and like how the sausage gets made, but Courtney is among the top of who can actually figure out what's happening. So I really appreciate
Thank you.
her tracking those things. So
Do my best from afar.
yes. And that is very difficult, because really the way the system is set up is to have a lobbyist in place in the boots on the ground. And so it is challenging when you're a small organization like us that you can't have that, right? Like that would be silly to spend that kind of money to have somebody right there. So you do have to use lots of other sources to try to get you the information that you need. So it's a challenge, but she takes it on very well. So
Thank you.
To rely on those relationships.
Important. They often go unappreciated. Can I assume that we're pretty much in lockstep with GSBA on the positions on all of these?
The ones that they have released. I mean, I'd have to hear, most of their positions, they say in the committee meeting. I read all the reports, and yes, I think we're pretty lockstep on all of the things that they would say.
Okay. I don't know if you have it, but Angela Palms, she has her kind of her email thing.
Yes, they're
I think if you're not on that list, you should be.
Yes.
Because that's, like you've done with Senate Bill 53, it's one of the few times that you might find out timely when you need to chime in if you want your voice to be heard. on these
I actually
issues.
wrote back to her after one of the reports recently, just because I so appreciate the work she puts into it and gets it out there, and just said, hey, I really appreciate that you put all this out there, because it does help you from afar keep track of what's going on.
I actually have several organizations like that, and I take all of them and lay them all out and see what the differences are. They all have a different take on it, and they all look at different bills. 'Cause if you look at GSBA's website, which is really good, their Capital Watch, I refer to that a lot. They take bills and they'll decide what's a hot bill, what's a watch bill, what's a monitor bill. And a lot of times the things that we would say is, oh gosh, this is the biggest thing to us. It doesn't even register on their system, so that's why I have to look at several different groups.
I'm glad you're doing it.
Right.
I also really appreciated the talking points that you worked up, because I had read about the bill, but I wasn't prepared to engage in the conversation effectively, so I really appreciate.
And Senator Parent mentioned that as well, that she really appreciated that we didn't just say, hey, we have concerns, but we said, hey, we have concerns and here's a way to fix it. She really appreciated that.
That's always the best approach, is if you go saying this bill's terrible, then they generally shut down, as most people do. Bringing something to the table, they're usually more open to that.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay, moving on to the board committee reports. Do you update on the property tax study committee?
Yeah. Do you all want me to start?
You can go ahead. Yeah.
So our responses for the RFP were due at 8 a.m. on the 11th, so yesterday, and we did that on purpose so we would know by tonight what we had. And we did get 2 responses. We got a response from Able Operations, Economic and Workforce Analytics, which I believe is a for-profit company, but I'm not positive. And we got a response from Center for State and Local Finance at Georgia State University. And so 2 of the 3 that had said that they were considering it did submit proposals. We, on our calendar, want to tentatively select the winning bid by March 8th so that we can approve it at the March 12th board meeting. So what I would like to recommend is putting out a Google Calendar for like maybe the week right after winter break. As long as we have 2 board members there, we can have the conversation of kind of where we are with things. And I assume that'd probably be Garrett and Heather, since you're our committee. And we can go through those. Ashaki has sent them out so everybody can see what the proposals are. But I would recommend we start with that, have that conversation a little bit earlier, just in case we feel like we need more time or we have to send them questions or something like that. That'll give us a little bit of a window to have that discussion before we actually decide what we want to bring to the full board for approval. So if you're okay with that, that's what I would recommend doing.
In parallel with that, I'm assuming Ashaki's going to send these proposals out to the entire board.
I think they were. Did you send them to everybody? Yeah.
And
She sent
so
them to everybody.
I know that we're just having 2 of us present to have the conversation in person, but I really would like to emphasize how important it is that we all read those and really understand them, so that when we get together and have the conversation together as a full board, it's a very productive one, and that we're not starting from scratch, because we all focus on different things at different times. But I think now it's time on this one, much like we came together last year, we had broken apart and worked on different aspects of the policy manual. And when it came time to pull it all together, we all had to dig in. It's time for us all to dig in on this one now, so that when we make the decision, we all feel really comfortable with it. That's just one thing that I ask, and I hope we do that in parallel, because we really don't have that much time between now and the next board meeting to get that done.
It'll also be pretty tight, because when this report comes in, we're hoping to actually convene the committee, which Heather and I are responsible for. But to date, we have not, convened a committee. So
correct.
We need to be able to do that in the time to get the public input to influence where we go from there.
I think we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sound okay?
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, next is future dates. All I see here right now is just the winter break and then our travel to Philadelphia. Is there anything else that we're missing, guys?
I don't think so, not that I know of.
I'm just wondering, is there any reason to have a discussion just about the summer conference, and if there's any interest in that, or if anyone's planning to go?
In Savannah?
The Savannah one? Yeah. I'll
One of the
probably go.
reasons to go to that is to participate in the legislative agenda for what the GSBA sets. So that's one consider. It's always good to have somebody go.
Well, and remember too, that's where we met Glenn Singleton. Was at that summer conference.
Yeah.
Tasha and I went
I've always
down
taken so
the
much
day
from them.
early, and that kind of kicked off a lot of the work we're doing right now.
Right.
When are the exact dates?
I can look.
Find
I mean, I
those.
can look another time too.
Why don't we'll find them and send
Okay.
them out.
Yeah, and maybe even just far in advance, throw the dates out of the conference that's usually held in December, early December, November, just so that we get that on our calendar. And even, I know we have kind of a general time frame for the fall retreat, but it's not too soon to kind of nail that down, because I feel like it's hard when we get close to get us all together.
Figure it out, right.
So,
Good point, thank you, Heather.
thanks.
Yeah, we'll look up any dates they've set for
Okay.
those major things as
Great.
far out, and we'll get them out to you.
Thank you.
And we'll put them on the board calendar also.
All right, and it looks like we do have a need for executive session to discuss legal and personnel.
So we didn't have any legal items come up to my knowledge, unless any board members know of a legal item. We do have several personnel items.
Okay, so just personnel.
I know that we've all received a legal brief from the.
Right. Okay, so I have a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Before we vote, do we
Oh,
anticipate
sorry.
voting
Oh, do
coming
we-
out of
We
the?
do not anticipate
Speak
any
voting.
action after exec
Right.
session.
So,
Second.
nobody-
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, folks.
Thank you all.
Am I supposed to hit the gavel?
Yeah.